Hi everybody. I am doing the lesson plan assignment on uh, The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe, and it's for 6th grade English. And for the content standards, it reaches 6.1, 6.2, and 6.4. And the learning objectives for this project is basically for my students to be able to analyze and construct and pull ideas and writing aspects from a piece of work and find out why those pieces are relevant and what makes the story good with them and how would the story be without those elements. So I wanted to talk about my pre-reading strategies and rationale because I think that's the most important. That's how we draw our students in. And how that would work is as a teacher, as teachers, we need to introduce the topic as interesting as possible so we can grab our students' attention. And so I created a PowerPoint. They will be given vocabulary words first. Before we even give them the Black Cat short story, I'm going to give them vocabulary words. And in these vocabulary lists, it'll have about 10 words. It'll be theme, subject, situation, attitude, allusion, sound, form, symbolism, foreshadowing, irony, and anaphora. And I made a PowerPoint with the definition of each that I'd be showing the students. But then throughout the PowerPoint, there's questions at the bottom, and they would only know the title of the story. So it would be interesting to see what they think based off the title, what the story's going to be about based off of their vocabulary words. So as a group, when the students are given the vocabulary worksheet, we will go over it as a class and kind of get the students' input and have them listen and demonstrate and see if they understand the vocabulary words before they even read the story. So I made this PowerPoint for them, and like I said, it's all the definitions. It kind of gives a list right here of what the vocabulary words are, and it's pretty simple. Like I said, the teacher or myself can throw in extra questions throughout the PowerPoint and see how engaged students get with that. So those are the list. So we would go over with students vocabulary terms. Okay, we have theme, subject, situation, attitude, allusion, sound, rhyme, form, genre, symbolism, foreshadowing, irony, and anaphora, right? Then we move on. Theme. Somebody read me the theme. The subject of a talk, a piece of writing, a person's thoughts, or an exhibition. A topic. So at the bottom there, the teacher would ask, okay, everyone, give me an example of a story we've read in the past of a theme. What's the story and what was the theme of that story? Then we move on. We say subject, and we read the subject, a person or thing that is being discussed, described, or dealt with. We move on to the next word, situation. There's the definition, a location and surroundings of a place. Give an example of this with your own home. So with a situation, where does your homework, when you do your homework at home, take place? What's the location? What's the surroundings? What does that room or place look like? Okay? Then you move on to the next word, attitude. A settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something, typically one that is reflected in a person's behavior. The question at the bottom says, can you tell the attitude of any piece that you read? So does every piece have an attitude? Then we move on. Allusions. We have an expression designed to call something to mind without mentioning it explicitly, an indirect or passing reference, and then you can give an example of that. Then you have sound and rhyme, correspondence of sound between words or the endings of words, especially when these are used at the ends of lines of poetry. So although this isn't a poem, we can ask, can you find the sound and rhyme in every story or in a story period? Can a story have a sound or rhyme? Then we move on to form and genre, a category of artistic composition as in music or literature characterized by similarities in form, style, or subject matter. The question at the bottom asks, what genre or form could you guess when, reading the title, The Black Cat? So what do we think form or genre this writing is going to be based off the title alone? Then we have symbolism, symbolic meaning attributed to natural objects or facts. And the question at the bottom says, what could be the symbol of a story about a school? So if we're just guessing, what could be symbols used as symbolism for a school? Foreshadowing would be a warning or indication of a future event. So how can the Black Cat title be an example of foreshadowing? Then we have irony, the expression of one's meaning by using language that normally signifies the opposite, typically for the humorous or empathic effect. And then we have, lastly, anaphora, the use of a word referring to or replacing a word used earlier in a sentence to avoid repetition, such as doing, I like it, and so they do. So basically, guys, I would go over this in the first day. All the vocabulary words. We make sure the students understand and know that these are the type of vocabulary words they want to look for when they read the story, and then it progresses into the paper they will actually be writing. But this is just the pre-reading strategies. They'll understand the vocabulary words. We'll go over it. I really want the teacher or myself, when I do this lesson, to use the title specifically for these vocabulary words just to see if they can predict what's going to happen in the story. So thanks, guys.